Welcome in here to Wolves Den. Jay Bir with you, how we always are. We're kind of switching things up here, just giving you a new look here because we like to keep things fresh here. You know what's fresh is that right there, at DJ Bir. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. I've been told I am, quote, the most lit. So, however you guys want to interpret that here. We have got a guest this week because, you know, you guys got tired of listening to me yammer on about nothing. So, let's bring in my guy here. Boom! Look at that, modern technology. From our good friends up there at KAIT, Matthew Schwartz. What is up, my dude?
Jay, what's night owls like to do things, but hey, I'm up and at 'em for you.
That's what I'm talking about. Teamwork, making the dream work here. Let's get right into things here. We had an interesting week here on the basketball slate of things here. Let's get to the men's side first here. Doing the old Carolina double here. We've got the App State game up here at first, and boy, oh boy, oh boy, this is just one of those games where, again, you know, Arkansas State kind of digs themselves a little bit of a hole, but then this was actually a kind of a nice little back and forth affair once things sort of settled in there. You see the scores down there at the bottom. But really the undoing of this team, it actually went overtime in this game, but the undoing of this team was just the free throws and the lack thereof of hitting said free throws. I guess, Schwartz, what do you make of this team? Because they seem to be kind of Jekyll Hyde, and they seem to have this habit of falling into deficits before they realize, oh, we've got a game going on.
Yeah, I mean, and to hit on this is, you know, we usually like to stop by about once a week or so, and that's something that you see. Sure, but you know, they just seem to have some struggles with. You can clearly see on the face of Coach Pilata that drives him absolutely bonkers I guess unfortunately, more than fortunately, they've kind of become accustomed to, and they want to try to eliminate. But man, you know, if these guys and imagine that's, you know, help the cause very much at all either.
Yeah, absolutely. Them digging those holes, man. It's kind of a gift and a curse at the same time here. We're checking out Coastal Carolina. Again, more of the same recipe in this game. First half was actually a little bit of back and forth, and then Arkansas State actually got down, I want to say about 12 in this one before they perked back up here in this game. Now, this game, you look at the stats, very even on both sides when it comes to the shooting, when it comes to the three-pointers. I want to say they were both hitting around that 30 to 35% range of things. If memory serves me right, I guess I could look it up. We have technology here. But really, the difference in this one, again, the free throws. This time they were on the better end of things than what Coastal Carolina was. I think the percentages were about the same, around that 70, 71% mark, but Arkansas State just getting to the line a lot more than what the Chants did. So, you know, a good bounce-back game in a lot of aspects. And, again, on the road in Coastal Carolina, one of those teams that just tends to give Arkansas State fits no matter how good or bad either team is. It's just one of those weird dynamics in the Sun Belt.
If you look back, I think it's the last at least 5 games, maybe 6 games, has consistency is something that this team is really, you know, trying to. Since, you know, Mel Eggleston came back in the second half, he's been consistent. You know, our very own Jonesboro High product. You know, he was the most consistent player last year behind Ty Cockfield, and you wondered how that would. That we were just talking about Coastal Carolina, Christian Willis, he had 13 points, which was a career high. More guys than just Marquise Eaton, because you know what you're getting out of him. So, John Burke-Couche, any guys like that can produce, this team can win some ball.
Yeah, exactly. We're kind of losing you a little bit there, Schwartz. So, but let me kind of fill in the blanks here for some of the people because we can kind of hear you here. But yeah, a lot of these guys, you were really interested to see how the dynamic. You mentioned Marquise Eaton. He's kind of taking on that guy role. One of the leading scorers. He's definitely the playmaker on this team. Melo Eggleston has really injected some life into this team. Cambert Cush, also just one of those guys. You don't necessarily depend on him, but he's definitely a guy that will go out there and he'll have a game here and there. And he's been pretty consistent with things as well. After the weekend, you split this one. This conference, man, it is wide open. It is wild. Throw the standings up there, guys. Let's kind of go through this. And Schwartz, we'll kind of get your take here from top to bottom on what the conference looks like here. But it's Little Rock leading the way right now. There we go. And then you've got the Georgias sitting there at 6-3 apiece. Arkansas State at 5. And here's, again, we said this last week, and it's a bit of a log jam right now. And really, just about from top to bottom, it's jammed up here. You see Arkansas State, South Alabama, both sitting there at 5-4. And then also at 5-4, you got Texas State, who's made a nice little run since kind of stumbling out of the gates here, at least in conference play. App State, not quite the doormat that we've known them to be of late. Sitting there at 10-10, though, 4-5. Coastal Carolina also 4-5, and still got an above 500 record. So that tells you everything you need to know about the Sun Belt going forward here. Troy, Texas Arlington. Texas Arlington, I don't want to say it's making a run, but they're kind of starting to figure some things out here. Both of them sitting at 8-12, 4-5 in the conference, and then the Louisianas are really bringing up the rear. So those are kind of about the two weakest links here in this whole thing, is that both of those teams are sitting at 2-7. Not really good on the year. So you've got about a 3-game cushion from 1st to 10th. It's really, to me, it's a little surprising to see how this is sort of progressed throughout the conference season so far. I really didn't think things were going to be as log jammed up myself as they actually are. Again, only a 3-game separation from Little Rock, the number 1 seed, all the way down to the 10 seed. A lot of times in the Bell, you'll kind of see a top 3 or 4, and then there's some obvious mid-tier teams. But now it looks like, man, this thing is wide open. I guess, Schwartz, what do you think of the Belt here in the early goings, especially with the likes of Little Rock, bouncing back from, way down at the bottom last year, now leading the way so far?
And I guess it proves that about any team can beat anybody on any given night.
Yeah, and we've seen it.
And, you talked about Little Rock, Arkansas State, as far as the men go, they haven't played them yet. So that's, A-State sitting here today, just 2 games out of that first place. I believe they still have to play Georgia State one more time and Georgia Southern. So they're playing South Alabama on here, actually. And then they have to, that's definitely they're still very much in it, and they're very much games together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's man, you look. There's really no layup games, to kind of borrow a basketball term there, and it's just, and every game is going to mean a lot more going forward, and that's really, I think, what you're going to try to see out of this team. I mean, obviously they're a younger team, but once they get into that pressure cooker, I'm going to be real interested to see how they kind of get into things here. Let's switch gears here. Let's go to the latest side of things. Arkansas State women also splitting the week. The schedule set up a little different here. I'm not 100% sure why they decided to do it like this, but they hosted Appalachia State, and then they were on the road here in Little Rock this past week. So interesting little schedule phenomenon, I guess, if you will, here. We didn't have any video of the App State game, but I will say they handled their business there. A 76-58 beat down in that one. Cruised in this one. Never really got close after the first quarter. They kind of flexed on them the whole game here. Little Rock, obviously a different story. Actually, we're down big in this one. Well, I say big, but this one was kind of a real back-and-forth affair up until the latter half of the fourth quarter here. Schwartz, what do we make of the women here? Because I know they're still trying to get accustomed to Matt Daniel and the system that he's putting in place and everything like that. And Little Rock is always just a thorn in their side. Doesn't matter, again, it goes back to what I said about the men earlier. It doesn't matter how good or bad either one of these teams is. This Little Rock team is always tough for Arkansas State. And that's a big game right there, and it could go a long way. And we'll get to the standings here in just a minute. But this one here is, whoo, that's a big L there for the ladies.
Well, coming into Saturday, Arkansas State had won 4 games in a row, which sounds nice for most programs, but for them, that was a team that had struggled most of the year, and so they came into Saturday playing their best basketball. You know, they had a big win over App State earlier in the week. I believe that was Thursday night.
Yeah.
And so this team had a lot of confidence coming into this one in the first half. They had a 3-point lead on the road in a place that they had never won at before. That was something that, I know Coach Daniel said that didn't necessarily matter that they had never won in I should say at the Jack Stevens Center.
Yeah.
But I think it, in the back of the mind, it played a little bit. And that was just a point in the second half where I can't recall her name, but she, had 19 points there. You can see one of those threes in the background. But had 26 points, I think. Two of them, her and Teal Battle had 47 of the combined 67 points. So those two girls just put on a show on Saturday. And, Jaira Washington had 23 for Arkansas State. So she really was the offense for the Red Wolves on Saturday. And Peyton Martin had double figures too. But they just needed that third score, and they really couldn't find that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team, after having a little bit of success, how they react to a loss, and if they can continue their solid play going forward, or if it's going to be another setback.
Well, how have we seen this team sort of? Here's App State. I thought we didn't have video of them. But how have we seen this team progress throughout the season so far here? This has really been sort of the big thing that I've noticed here. I mean, early on, it was just tough scene, and you could tell. The shooting isn't there consistently by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of the defensive categories, they're just not very good. But once they got into conference play, things seem to be clicking, or they seem to have figured something out. Not that the numbers are they're not great. But, you've also got basically your entire season leading up to this where things seem to be a little askewed. But now they seem to be playing well and maybe not necessarily putting up big-time numbers on either side of but they're getting W's, and that's really the only stat that matters.
Well, here's the thing I looked at that I noticed today. And Coach Daniels talked about this a lot. Is that we talked about the men being on the road a lot. The women have been on the road even more so.
Yeah.
And they're just 2-8 on the road this season. But if you look at their home record, they're 5-1. And so 5 of their 7 wins coming at home. So that's something that I think in the second half of the year is going to play to their favor, hopefully. And you know how important it is to defend the home court. And that's something that they definitely look to do. But I don't know. I think it's just, after half of the season, Coach Daniel and the girls, just finally getting, accustomed to one another, building those relationships, building the trust. But, he does need – they do need some more help outside shooting. Jada Ford's been good most of the year. Peyton Tennyson's also a really great outside shooter, but she's been hurt lately. So I think that's kind of affected their offense as well. But in the meantime, they've still won, 4 out of their last 5 ball games, which you can't be too upset about.
Yeah, I can't be upset there. And it kind of goes to what the men were trying to do. They've gotten a little more. This is what we kind of talked about last week, at least last year with the guys, and I'll make the comparison here eventually, is there was just a lot of, watching Ty Cockfield on the men last year. And now it seems like this year they're a lot more balanced out. And we saw a lot of that with the women here. Here I am finally getting to the point here, where it seems like there seems to be a little more scoring depth. Now, there's not really, like you mentioned, that third person that you can really depend on a lot of times. And, you get into some of these close games where you're just putting up battles back and forth. Kind of seems to be that thing. Also, the inside presence. Arkansas State, it's been a while since they've had a real inside presence. Now, they're really good at getting to the free throw line. That is about the one good stat that the women do have going for them. Do you think there's enough of an inside punch right now? I mean, granted, this is, again, year one. This is the team that Coach Daniel inherited. But Do you think going forward that that's something maybe he needs to address?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that could probably be the biggest thing because I think he has Peyton Martin, who's been great all season. She's the leading scorer on this team, but I think there's just maybe some depth that needs to be fixed. At that position, he plays Trinity Jackson some, but then he gets Madison Heckert in there as well sometimes. But you don't see them on the floor for 20 minutes a game. You just don't. And I don't know if that's just his system that he has in place, and what he's looking for out of his post players. But I think that would probably be the biggest thing. But I just got to feel too in the women's game that's a lot harder to find than the men's game. I mean, you can go find guys 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" around, but I mean, how often are you finding a lot of girls that are 6'2", 6'3"? I just don't think that's as common of a thing to see. So if you can just find, but it's also a system thing. I mean, he's a guy that wants to run up and down the floor, keep that game as fast paced. So I think with the team he has, he doesn't quite have exactly what he wants, but I think in due time, if he gets those type of players in, you're going to see this team flourish.
Yeah, he's working wonders so far, and again, maybe in conference season here, they've kind of turned a corner here. All right, let's take a look at the standings here. It's not quite as wide open as the men, but here you go. Yeah, it's a bit of a logjam up there at the top, though. Coastal, Troy, Arlington, all sitting at 5-1, all over 500 overall on the season. You see the Raging Cajuns also at 4-2. USA there at 4-2 as well, and then I mean, there's a logjam there once you get to that 4-2. And then Arkansas State and Little Rock also sharing that 4-2 record. And then things drop off the wall here. Southern sitting at 2-4, App State 1-5, Georgia State also at 1-5, and then Texas State and ULM. ULM, good for them. They got a conference win. So feels like it's been a while since we said anything positive about ULM on this show, but there they are. And then Texas State, oddly enough, it's almost kind of the inverse of what Arkansas State has done. You see the record there. So at one point they were 7-4. You're thinking, oh, Texas State might be okay here, but 0-6 to start conference play here. So it's a tough scene there for the Bobcats. Schwartz, the conference in the ladies seems to be a little more defined. You kind of have those tiers I was talking about where you don't really see that with the men. You've got an obvious top three, and then it just kind of feels like everybody else. From what you've seen so far, is that kind of the same vibe you're getting?
Well, I mean, I guess a lot of people wouldn't have expected Arkansas State to have the start to the conference year that they would have expected. But, this is a key week for them. They obviously have Louisiana on Thursday and then Coastal Carolina. So, you want to come away in an ideal world, you want to come away with both of those wins. But if you can get one, you're going to still be sitting there in the picture for, the top half of the league. So if they like I said, and really that Little Rock game was one that they probably had for about 3 quarters, and then they just one girl got hot and she took over, and that's kind of the moral of the story. So it's going to be really important for Arkansas State this week, to win one, but needing to win at least one, but ideally like to win 2 to still have a fight in this thing.
Absolutely here, and you kind of jumped ahead on me here, but that's okay here. Let's look ahead here. You mentioned the women. You got the Louisiana, got to win that one, you'd think, and then Coastal Carolina. Now, granted, that one's at home, so this one ought to be interesting. And again, it's a weird schedule thing going on here because they're on the road in Lafayette, and then they host Coastal Carolina. So I'm not sure who's doing the scheduling at the conference office here.
I'm not sure with the scheduling either. That's kind of confused me this year.
It seems odd. I thought we were trying to save money on the travel and things here, but apparently not. So you've got one that seems like a layup, and then you've got one that's going to be a tough test. But you mentioned that 5-1 home record. I guess, how do you see that? You mentioned the splitting. I think you have to get that win against Lafayette, and then we'll see against Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Coastal being, towards the top of the league there, I guess that, I know they're sitting at 15-2, but that game is at home. So you like to think you could take care of business on the home floor. And then Louisiana, I wouldn't say that that's an easy one either. That's still an 11-6 club. So that's a team with a good record. So, definitely probably the toughest week that these ladies have had thus far this season in terms of a schedule. So, well, I'm not much in for the prediction game, but I can tell you at least a 1-1 week, 2-0 week would be ideal.
Boy, they get that 2-0 week, man. Let's go here, knocking off one of the top dogs in the conference there.
Yeah, now, this time next week, if we're talking about them having a 2-0 week, then I think the conversation starts to change a little bit.
Absolutely here. Let's look at the men. They're doing the Alabama double. Again, a little bit of a quirk in the schedule here, hosting one, on the road for the other. And if I remember right, I believe, let me look off to the side here, hosting South Al, on the road against Troy. Troy just seems to be another one of those teams where Arkansas State just doesn't traditionally do well there. Now, I know they've played them well at home normally. These are two big games. And again, like I said, with the conference being the way it is right now, they go 2-0. Boy, they're in the conversation for double buys and all that. You lose these two, you're talking about hosting in the first round, maybe going on the road in the first round of the Sun Belt tournament. So it's quite a difference here in the early goings on. Kind of how do you see these matchups breaking down?
Well, if you look at it, I guess it was about maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago when they went to South Alabama during the middle of the week.
Yeah,
kind of had it handed to them. So that's one that I think that they have circled that they gotta kind of give the revenge back. And then
right.
the one in Troy, they came here just about a week ago,
yeah.
And that game went to overtime. So kind of a wild one, and especially at home too. You would think going on the road that they're going to have to take care of business. So I don't know. That South Alabama game is going to be kind of tough because that was a team that's predicted to do well in the league this year. So if they can come away with that one, especially being at home, I think that would be a quality win for this team on the resume this year. And then Troy, like you said, they've had trouble in the past. So, having beaten a team once already this year, you like to think there's some confidence that they can go do it again. But doing it on the road is a much different task. So we'll see what happens.
And then also, too, maybe not digging yourselves a double-digit hole. That's really what I want to see. If they could just do a game where they're not down 10 at some point in a game, win or lose, I think that would do wonders maybe for the psyche. Now, obviously, if you're just down 9 and you just really can't climb out of a hole, that's one thing. But we've seen this team where they can climb out of holes, and it's very NBA-ish because a lot of times in college basketball, you see a double-digit lead. It just feels insurmountable at times. But for these guys, they make those NBA-esque runs where they can go on a 10-0 run, but, man, at the same time, they can also give up a 10-0 run.
Well, what's interesting about that is that the team seems to kind of thrive off of that. And I know that's maybe not – and maybe that's not a trait that if you're a coach you want to have happen because, you don't want to be trying to figure out how to climb out of a double-digit hole every night. But they seem to do pretty well with it. But in an ideal world, you obviously want to be leading, and you don't want to be that team that gives up that double-digit lead because that's not a good look either. So it's I guess it's a double-edged sword there. But I think we've said it enough. Consistency is just the biggest thing with this team. If they can put together a couple consistent games, and obviously this is a way better team than what we saw last year, even with a great player like Ty Cockfield.
Absolutely here, and I think the spreading out of the scoring and things like that is really helping this team. Obviously, like we've talked about, Melo Eggleston really injecting himself in there. Now he's being elevated to the starting role and really playing a big role in that offense. I think it's done wonders for them so far.
Absolutely.
All right, here. I know we're knee-deep in basketball season here, but I would just be remiss if we didn't shout out our boys, Omar Bayless, Kirk Merritt, taking on, each other in the NFLPA Shrine Bowl game out there at the Rose Bowl, putting on a show there. The only bummer thing here, you see Omar Bayless scoring a touchdown, doing what he does, the fade route.
What's new?
Yeah, exactly. That's what these guys do. They score touchdowns. And in this game, interestingly enough, there was only 2 receiving touchdowns. Our boys had both of them. Now, unfortunately for them, those were the only 2 plays that they made the whole game, at least in terms of offense. I saw a couple of good blocking plays that burst some little pops for the running game here. But there you go. Bayless Merritt scoring TDs, doing their thing. Jim Nagy, hope he was watching because, there you go. But I guess I guess the one thing I would think here is how much stock do you put into something like this? I mean, obviously there's the practice and all that, but we don't get to actually watch a lot of the practice stuff that goes on. And we saw some pub from both of these guys. But for both of them to kind of have an interesting little quirk in the game itself as having the only receiving touchdowns, what do you think this does to their stock? I mean, where do you kind of see both of these guys in the overall scheme of things when it comes to the NFL draft?
Well, I think if anything, it just gives some good attention for these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what for them what it's like playing in a non-Power 5 school, playing in the Sun Belt.
Yeah.
That the respect that the two of them definitely deserve has not been there the whole season, and we don't have to pick on Jim Nagy, but
but we're going to.
But it's easy to do it.
Exactly.
But the case in point is Omar Bayless was a guy that finished, top 10 in catches, yards, and touchdowns in the country, not the Sun Belt, in the country, and had the lead in yards until the national championship game. So a guy that played 2 more games than him. It took a guy an extra 2 more games to pass him in yards. So
exactly.
Let's just put that in perspective. I think actually, as much as we've talked about Omar Bayless, I don't know that we've talked about Kirk Merritt enough. I think he's a guy that a lot of people at the next level like. I mean, he could be a slot receiver.
Oh, yeah.
I think honestly, a guy like that's going to find his niche on special teams. I mean, he's a guy who we've seen, take kick returns, take them back to the house. I could see him in the at the next level being a guy that's on special teams. I don't know he's quick. I don't know if he's going to have the speed to be a returner, but I think he could. I mean, and then Omar's going to be a guy that obviously is, maybe he'll go mid rounds and somebody will find him, and then you look up middle of the season and you're like, where did that guy come from? Oh, he came from Arkansas State. And then you look at what did he do in college? Oh, his senior year he only had 17 touchdowns and 1,700 yards receiving. And
no big deal, right?
90 catches. I think he's going to make some team very happy that they drafted him, and maybe wish that they had drafted him higher. So, I think if anything, maybe for those two guys, it got them a little bit more national spotlight that really the both of them deserved.
Absolutely. I like how you mentioned Kirk Merritt. Talking about this year, obviously when you have a season like Omar Bayless does, you're going to fall under the radar to
but he had
the
a great
casual
season
fan.
Too. That's the thing that people.
Well, yeah, and even last year, he was the guy that led the way, led the team in the Sun Belt in catches. He was up there in terms of yards, had a lot of touchdowns. I mean, that guy's a touchdown machine. He's very efficient. And I think the way that he goes and gets the ball is really, like you mentioned, I think he's going to make a team look really, really good if they draft him. I think you could probably see both of those guys maybe 4th through the 6th rounds. It just kind of depends on needs and wants, and, things get weird there in the latter rounds. But I think both guys probably get drafted. I think it's going to be a little bit of a long shot maybe on Merritt, depending on if he gets invited to the Combine, all that stuff. But I'm with you on Merritt, though. I think if you can make that guy almost like a stretch slot guy, because, I mean, we've seen him. He can get down the field in a quick, fast hurry. Like I said, he'll go up and get the ball. I mean, he seems to have all those intangibles. He's not the tallest dude there is, but, I mean, he's not like a short guy either. I want to say he's pushing, 6'1", 6'2", and come on, man.
Well, and then I think the other thing that, maybe people don't talk a lot about is character, and that's something I know that teams look at. Omar Bayless, obviously a great person. We can't speak enough about his relationship with the late Wendy Anderson.
Yeah.
Just the leader that he was for this team all throughout the year. Kirk Merritt, a guy that, since he stepped foot on the Arkansas State campus was, has played great and played consistent, and that quote unquote tape was hasn't really been an issue. It has only told the truth with these two guys. So I think, whatever team, picks them up, whether it's in the draft or signs them as undrafted free agents, I think they're getting 2 quality guys too, which I think is something that maybe doesn't get talked about enough either.
Absolutely. So if the Miami Dolphins are watching, come on, guys, we need some receivers. Let's go.
I'm a Redskins fan, so last year Terry McLaurin was a big hit.
Yeah.
Maybe a Kirk Merritt or Omar Bayless could be a sneaky pick too.
Absolutely here. I know I do some of those mock drafts, and Those are some good-looking picks there in that 4th, 5th round here. But we'll see how it happens here. We still got the combine, still got a lot of other things to get forward to.
And then the pro day, of course, up here in Jonesboro.
Yeah, plus you got the pro day. So, and I'm sure a lot of guys are going to come down and check these dudes out because, again, you know, both guys have put up massive numbers. Obviously, the last season that Bayless had, people I think are going to want to see it with their own eyes to be like, is this guy really as good as what the numbers say, or is he just some big fish in a small pond kind of concept here? Not that the Sun Belt is nothing to slack on here. They've had some pretty solid receivers come out of this thing. T.Y. Hilton, I know, is the guy that comes to mind immediately, and they've had several other guys too. But it'll be interesting.
J.D. McKissick.
Yeah, J.D. McKissick. Yeah. Come on, man. How could I forget J.D.? All right, so we're going to put a bow on this thing now here. Schwartz, where can the people find you? What do you got going on?
All right, well, obviously, you know, KIT, Monday through Sundays. Myself and Chris Hutchison, our wonderful sports director as well. You can find me on Twitter at Matt Schwartz TV, and I believe Chris is at Chris Hutchison. And, of course, on Facebook, Region 8 Sports is where you can find us. I'm also at Matthew Schwartz, Region 8 Sports on Facebook as well. So we try to keep you up to date with everything Red Wolves and everything up here in the NEA, and then our occasional appearances down in your neck of the woods when we when we have something going on. But yeah, that's where you can find us, and of course KIT8.com is where you can get us online as well.
There you go. Shouts out to our partners up there. They really do. You guys do. You help us out a lot when it comes to Arky State coverage, and we certainly appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming on today here and talk a little hoop with us here. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely, anytime.
All right, my brother. Be good here. All right, so that is it here. Again, a big week for both the men's teams and the women's team. You got the South Alabama. You got the Alabama double on the men's side. You got the weird Lafayette and Coastal Carolina thing on the women's side here. So hopefully we're talking about at least splits for both these teams. At least you'd like to see 2-0, but let's be realistic here. This is going to be a tough scene out here for the ladies, at least here. For the men, you never know. They get your heart rate up. So at the end, Thursday, Saturday games, both ESPN Plus if you can't get to them. So make sure you get up on that here. And we will see you guys again next week right here on the Wolves Den. Don't on the paper this time, but imagine it dropping.